on? Andy, am I on? Okay, thank you. TV. Oh, I have it on. Testing. Well, good evening, and welcome to St. Joseph's on the Carrollton Manor. Tonight, I am privileged, really, to not only introduce our family, our parish community here welcomes you, but also I'm privileged that you are here, and committed and interested and concerned and maybe even a little bit frightened or unsure about the epidemic that we have of addiction, of heroin addiction. It's prevalent throughout, obviously, throughout the United States, but we know that from recent reports that Frederick County, and especially Frederick City and Thurmont, have been have had serious issues with this. And, but anyway, here we are. And we're hopefully ready to open ourselves up to information and also to reflect and then to respond as best we can in our own professions. And I'm here to welcome some members of our churches in Frederick County who are here with us tonight as well. Thank you so much for being here. And certainly, particularly, there are a number of exhibits in the parish center afterwards. They have material and information and help for where you can go, and also to help to direct you for places and to have, if others that you know need assistance with this addiction. I'm very pleased, as I said, to welcome you all here tonight, and especially Jim Pyle, who will make his presentation on this. And at this point, I would like to introduce and welcome to the microphone Mike Jones, who is the chairperson of our Social Action Committee here, ministry here at St. Joseph's.
Thank you, Father. Welcome, everyone. Tonight, we're going to have a couple things going on. First, we're going to hear a testimony about someone who actually has traveled that road. And then after that, we're going to hear from Jim Piles, who has real-life experience, you might say, for 25 years? 28. Actually in the trenches, you might say, in Maryland and the surrounding area, battling this. So tonight, we'll start with Denise, if you'd like to come up. And then after that, we'll have Jim. And then afterwards, there'll be a short question and answer period here. And then everyone is welcome to our parish center, as Father said, for some refreshments. And also, we have a number of local help organizations have tables set up where you can ask questions from them and get information from them also. So, thank you.
Well, good evening. Can everybody hear me okay? My name is Stanise Anderson, and I'm named after my dad, who's Stanley Anderson. My mother's name is Stanette, my brother's name is Stanley. No, I'm kidding about my mom, no. But yeah, so it's Stanise, so it's a little hard, right? But I'm just so grateful that I'm here tonight, and I've been asked to come and share my testimony. Actually, I know it's going to be a glorious night because so many things came in the way of me getting here tonight, of us getting here tonight. I mean, rental cars, trains, shuttle buses, you name it, then metro, and then she had to pick me up, but we made it here. And I knew I had to get my prayer warriors praying because I said, oh yeah, the enemy doesn't have any new tricks, right? And I'm like, yeah, you try, I'm going tonight, and I just fought it off. I said, I don't care, no, I'm not listening, I'm going to be there. It's going to be all right. And here I am. And I know that this time has been assigned to me and to you. Everybody that's in here was supposed to be here tonight. You probably went through changes yourself. That traffic out there is just ludicrous, right? And yet here you are. And I'm here because I have a hope. I've been given a hope. I was hopeless at one point, but I've been given a hope, and my duty is to share that hope with others. I have this little poem that I wrote after I had come from a Durham jail, Durham County Jail in North Carolina, after having talked to some of the people. And the poem is, I went back to the hotel room and I wrote this poem. It's called Tell Me. Tell me a story that I have not heard. Lead me to prayer. Give me an encouraging word. Tell me a story that will teach me how to see that God loves and cherishes even me. Tell me a story of God's goodness and power so I won't give up in this next hour. Tell me a story of what he's done for you. Then maybe I'll believe that he can do the same for me too. Sometimes I get weary, I get weak, I feel worn. Tell me a story so I'll know that it was not by mistake that I was born. Tell me a story of how God leads the way. Tell me a story so I can get through one more day. Does God really work in mysterious ways? Does God care how I spend the rest of my days? Does he love me? Does he care? Will he always be there? Tell me a story, because sometimes life just ain't fair. Sometimes I feel like I'm living in a lion's lair. Tell me a story, and please, please make it true. I need to know God loves me as much as he loves you. Please tell me. And I believe that's why I was saved from myself in order to come and share the story. Because it ends up not really being my story, as you'll hear in the end. You'll see that it's really God's story. Because they have this old saying, that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And, if you can... Nobody will help you when you're down, and they'll kick you when you're down. And, nobody, God won't help you if you're not trying to help yourself. But I wasn't trying to help myself. I had gotten to the point I was trying to kill myself. And it didn't start out this way. You're looking at me and you're saying survivor. I'm a heroin overdose survivor. I know it's only by God's grace. Here, we gotta do this. It's by grace, God's grace, that I'm alive. I was a politician's daughter in Washington, D.C. I live in D.C. now, right? Had everything you could possibly want, college educated parents, everything you could dream of. But it was something about my life, or the way I felt about myself. I remember being 8 years old and writing on the wall, nobody likes me, everybody hates me. And I don't know why I felt like that, but I just always did. I didn't feel connected. Oh, thank you, Mike. A mic from Mike. Thank you. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. So, it's like I wasn't really trying to help myself, like I said, and my family, I was just trying to, I'm kind of like lost in where I was now, Mike. It was, giving God the glory, the bottom line. But I remember actually being, something happened to me. And when I was 14 years old, because a lot of times you see heroin addicts and addicts, period, alcoholics or whatever, and you don't realize what goes into making that addict or alcoholic. And in my life, it was the trauma, the unaddressed trauma, the issues, the mental health issues that were not addressed. And I found myself trying to medicate myself. I started out, and I only meant to wet my feet. Some of y'all not old enough. There was a song, I only meant just to wet my feet, but you pulled me in. Oh, the waters of addiction run deep. That's what happened. But the song, of course, it says the waters of love run deep. But I found out that the waters of addiction run even deeper. So anyway, so this went into the mix of me becoming the addict that I was. I was raped when I was 14, and I was gang raped by 3 men. 3 men, and I was 14. And a girl had taken me over there. And I tried to pretend that it didn't happen. I went to the police station. They beat me almost beyond recognition or whatever. But it was like I didn't want to tell. I didn't know really what was going on, what had happened, because I knew I was supposed to be a virgin, you know, and somebody had taken that from me. They had brutally beat me and hurt me, you know, but I didn't know what to do with all that anger and stuff. And so I just stuffed it inside. And before I knew it, drugs just started looking good to me because it would stop the pain. You know, the pain of knowing what had happened to me. And my dad, I remember calling out to him, but he wasn't there. Nobody was there. Nobody could help me. You know, and I would relive that over and over in my dream. And so I remember this night, I was after a dance. I went to this guy's house. There was a lot of us down there partying. And I remember him pulling out a little thing of white powder. And he said, you know, you just put it on at that time like a little quill or something, and snort it up your nose. And when I snorted it up my nose, all of a sudden, I had this power. I felt so powerful. As a matter of fact, like all guys do to try to give you drugs, he was trying to kiss me after that, right? But I was up on the by the refrigerator, and when I took the drug, it was like, you know, he came at me and I pushed him into the refrigerator. And so I said to myself, a man will never hurt me again as long as I got this. Because he backed up off me. Because that was my frame of reference. Men had hurt me, you know, and, you know, so anyway, so it went on and things just got really bad for me. Like I said, you know, I was living a good life, but I ended up perpetrating a fraud. Like, that's like trying to act like everything is wonderful, but it's not. You know, you look at me, you know, I was doing commercials and stuff for businesses. I was, you know, I was playing tennis, you know, riding bikes. I was doing all kind of stuff. But in the stillness of the night, when everybody was gone, I was using drugs. And I was using heroin. And I could not start with heroin, like in my arms and all. So I started in my hands because I didn't have any veins. So this same woman right here that you're seeing right now, I used to go, my hands were so big. And they used to say, oh, just put toothpaste on your tracks. Because after a while, you get needle tracks. The toothpaste didn't work. Only Times worked, right? So I remember this particular day, though, I had gone to work, right? And because at this point, I became a workaholic. Anything but deal with my own life. You know, anything. In your life, everybody knows I have a problem but me. I'm thinking I'm looking like a model. I'm in a size 5'7", and my mama, she gets to crying when I come over there. I said, that's why I don't come over here, because you're crying and everything. She said, well, baby, look at you. You look so, I said, I look like a model. You're just jealous, you know. But I was sick. And I was trying everything to get off. I moved to another town. I moved to Summit, New Jersey. You can't get more lily white than Summit, New Jersey. I got off the train, and they were like, well, why are you here? They didn't put it like that. But, you know, I'm like, they said, no, they're over there. But anyway, but I thought that, but when I went to New Jersey Summit, I took myself. You know, and I said I was not going over to New York, but I found myself going to New York. Now I'm from D.C. I'm a woman. At that point, I was like 34 years old. And so, you know, you just don't go to New York by yourself. And the friends, they were saying, you can't go to New York. I said, I'll be all right. Because I felt like I was, you know, I couldn't nothing hurt me. I'm from D.C., I can handle it, you know. And I remember going to New York, and when I got down to where the guys were on 125th Street in Harlem to get my drugs, get the heroin, it's like I pulled up like, you know, hey, how y'all doing, you know, because, you know, it's like the world, you know each other. The addicts know another addict. I don't know, it's our way, our flavor, or whatever. And so I would go around them, but it was like, it was so clear that I wasn't supposed to be there, you know. I would see guys with boxing gloves on their feet for shoes. One had a boxing glove and a shoe. I mean, it was really bad, but, you know, it just got to the point where I didn't care anymore. And I remember I couldn't get away from myself, so I came back to D.C., and when I came back to D.C., I was in my office. I had a really nice job, #1 DuPont Circle. And I was using drugs all the time. I would shoot up before I go in the morning. I would shoot drugs in the bathroom at work. I would shoot drugs everywhere. And then on this particular Sunday, I had come to work, and actually, I wasn't supposed to work on Sundays, right? It was my day off. But anything would deal with my life. So I went there on a Sunday. I had stole dope from my boyfriend the night before. Now, to be honest with you, I didn't really like him. But if you got dope, that's where it gotten. Then you had me. I mean, you know, it was like, I had to learn a whole new way of life. I had to put all my values and everything that I was taught. I had to just leave all that behind. And I went into a world that I just didn't even know. And I didn't know how dangerous it was. And then one day when I was at work, and I only know this story because the paramedics told me. I remember going into the building that Sunday, number 1 DuPont Circle. I had my heroin. I cooked it up. I remember getting, you know, seeing red or whatever. And that's all I remember until somebody was like beating me in my chest or something. And I'm like, what's going on? Water was just running off me. And it was like spikes of light and everything. And I just kind of went out. And then I remember seeing tops of trees. Then I remember seeing, you know, the ambulance, hearing the ambulance, you know, and seeing my cousin in the emergency room. And come to find out, I had OD'd in that building. And it was a Sunday, so only by the grace of God, somebody came through. She was on her way to Europe. She stopped by the office. She saw my keys in the door. And she came to my office. My office was locked with the music on, so she went and got the guard. And they say they came in and they found me laying across my desk, more dead than alive. The heroin, the syringe still in my arm, in my, you know, my wrist, or wherever it was. So, and then when I got to they said on the way to the hospital, I died, right? I flatlined. And they said, every time you would wake up, miss, you would say, I want to live. And he said, you flatlined again? This is the paramedics telling me the story. They came to visit me in my hospital room because I was in GW for 3 months. I did so much damage. So he said, so we just wanted to come and tell you. And then we prayed, and we're not praying men, but we prayed, and you came back and you said, I want to live. And they said, miss, you flatlined again before we could even get you there. And you came back and you said, I want to live. But let me tell you, I did not want to live. I was sick and tired of myself. I couldn't stop. No matter how hard I tried, how many things I did, I couldn't stop on my own. You know, and so it had to be the Holy Spirit. I don't know if you all believe in the Holy Spirit. Something was speaking for me, because it sure wasn't me, because when I went in that place, I said it was a good day to die, because I was sick of myself. And I'm going to tell you the truth. It was more so suicide attempt. After I went to counseling, I realized it was a suicide attempt, because I saw that the heroin was very, very yellow, which meant at that time it was very, very raw, you know, uncut or whatever. And so when I saw that, I just said, it's a good day to die. This is where I go, I'm just going, because I'm tired. I'm 35 years old. I'm just sick. I'm sick and tired of myself. But God had another plan, because I woke up and here I am. You know, so I know God had a plan for my life. And what he started doing is I started going to 12-step meetings. And I'm going to tell you now, you know, in the beginning it wasn't easy. I had to undo everything. I had to unlearn everything and relearn something new. I didn't know what the behavior was. I didn't even know that you go on dates and not, see, my thing, I didn't date out. I dated to get money, to get drugs. I had to learn how to date just to be in a relationship and get intimate with somebody. I didn't know how to do any of that. And I had to learn that, and people were willing to teach me, and they're willing to help you if you just say, I need help. Ain't nobody gonna help somebody that know everything. I had to dummy up. I call myself an intellectual idiot. They used to call me Dr. Grandy. My maiden name was Dr. Grandy, right? They called me, because I'd analyze everything. You know, anything but deal with my life, with myself. But I'm here to tell you, if you have a loved one, or you yourself, there's so many of us that are dealing with this right now. You know, I was reading the paper today in the Washington Post Express paper, and they were saying this cart fentanyl, it's the fentanyl, and there's a new one, cart fentanyl. is how it's pronounced. And there was one death, there was 3 deaths this weekend, overdoses. One was in Frederick. And this stuff is for elephants. It's not even for human beings. But these pushers are pushing this dope that's going, no, it's going to kill you. Now they had somebody, they said, had bought something, they arrested a guy, and he had sold somebody some of this fentanyl laced heroin, because you don't know what's in it. Every time I shot dope, I didn't have a degree or anything. I didn't know what was in it. It's white. I'm gonna try it. I gotta use it. If it kill me, it kill me. I mean, you know. And anyway, this stuff is really killing people. And they arrested a guy who had sold this girl, 22-year-old, $100 worth of laced with this stuff. And as it turned out, her mother found her in the bathroom dead. They locked him up, you know. And now this this new one here, fentanyl is bad enough. That's what killed Prince. Now this new one is 10,000 times more potent than heroin. I mean, even your deputies and anybody that is, if you're in your house, you can't breathe it. If they said if a dog were to sniff it, the dog would die. That's how bad it is. So that means if you got family members, it's not just about us anymore. When I was using, it felt like I was just killing me. You know, I was sick of living anyway. You know, but now it's going to families. So suppose your daughter or your son get a hold of it, your mother, you know, like, what's this? She'd be dead right then and there. And so, you know, we gotta think about that too. But so I just came to share that with you and hope it's giving you hope that I feel like this. If God could do this for me, He'll do it for anybody. You know, and now I got clean in 1985. So was that 35, 33? I don't know. But I know that long-term recovery is possible, and I'm living proof. And I'm going to leave you with this. Lord, I know I've been changed. Lord, I know I've been changed. Lord, I know I've been changed. The angels in heaven done sign my name. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There you've heard it from someone who, like I said, went down the road and made it back. So now you're going to hear from Jim Piles, who's been there, done that. He's got information for you right now that some of it's going to be a little graphic, quite shocking, but it's real, it's happening, and it's now, and it's what is going on in today's world. So, Jim?
Thank you, Mike. Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. One life, one day, we're going to change Maryland. You're going to hear me say an awful lot about that today, those short period of time we have. I'm going to talk to you this evening, what's occurring in your community? What's created this opioid epidemic? Why are people all of a sudden dying? I'm going to talk to you about heroin, talk about naloxone or Narcan, fentanyl, carfentanil, prescription meds. You'll hear me say today, it's my belief, the opioid epidemic has created the heroin epidemic. I'm going to share with you some very strong beliefs, but as that's my belief, the opioid epidemic has created the heroin epidemic. I'm going to talk about crystal meth, crack cocaine, and drug addiction. But before I do, give me a little bit of time to introduce myself. Anytime I sit and I listen to anybody speak, they don't tell me their training, their education, their work experience. The whole time I'm wondering, how does he or she know what they're talking about? I'm a retired major with the Maryland State Police. I grew up in the eastern panhandle of West Virginia. And upon graduation from high school, I was recruited to play baseball at a number of campuses. And I chose Allegheny College of Maryland. Coach Pizarnik and I were leaning against the railing, and Coach says, Jimmy, he says, what do you want to do in this game called life? I said, Coach, the part of my brain that does math does not work. Coach says, what about criminal justice? It was nearly 2 years later, my cousin from my hometown, Robert F. Piles, was a police officer in Cecil County, Maryland. He was working, and he was shot in the head. 9 days later, he passed of his injuries, and I watched hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of law enforcement officers come to my hometown to pay respects to someone they didn't know. Upon 2 years at Allegheny College of Maryland, I did my last 2 years of undergraduate at Fairmont State. I did my graduate studies at Johns Hopkins University. Most of some executive leadership schools at Johns Hopkins, the DEA National Academy, LSU, Weapons of Mass Destruction. Most of my time I was in some type of plainclothes assignment. I graduated from the State Police Academy, working the road for about 16 months. Then I went into working undercover where I had real long hair, had ear piercings, and I worked undercover from Garrett County to Baltimore City. And I can promise you I lived every man's dream as a young individual. Promoted to corporal, Firearms Enforcement Division, Assault Weapons, Warrant Apprehension Task Force. As a sergeant, I was in Baltimore City and part of a Warrant Apprehension Task Force. This is where I picked up my informal PhD in heroin. In 2.5 years, we arrested over 200 people for homicide. The 2.5 years I was there, they averaged over 1,200 shootings. That's over 1,200 times the guns fired and the bodies hit, and they were averaging almost a murder a day. John Muhammad Lee Malvo, 12 years ago, these people killed 10 people in 10 days. I was on that sniper task force as we arrested them Interstate 70 at the Frederick, Washington County line. Promoted to the rank of detective sergeant, I was responsible for everything criminal and narcotic in Allegheny County. I was promoted to the rank of lieutenant. I was responsible for the drug unit here, for the state police up to Garrett County. I served as a barrack commander in Cumberland, the dual barrack commander in McHenry. I was a captain. I was a troop commander. As a major, I was assistant bureau chief. In the state police world, what that meant, you look at this great state. From Garrett County to Cecil County, your top 9 counties. I had everything criminal and I had everything narcotic. Then for the entire state, I had the following statewide units: auto theft, public corruption, crimes against your environment, insurance fraud, our polygraph unit, gang enforcement, computer crimes, the forensic side of computer crimes, child recovery, Maryland Center for Missing Children, human trafficking, state apprehension team, proactive criminal enforcement team, the technical surveillance team. I was also the lead for the Maryland State Police on the heroin and opioid epidemic. We put a plan together, and our plan was prevention, enforcement, awareness. The Maryland State Police was the first state police agency in the United States to equip our troopers with Narcan, naloxone. Very quickly, we had over 800 troopers in every county in Maryland. The Maryland State Police was saving lives on heroin and opioid overdoses before any trooper in the United States ever saved a life. Enforcement. We will never arrest our way out of the problems we are facing. When you look at Cecil County, Maryland in 2013, per capita, very small county, but they were number 1 in violence. They were number 1 in heroin overdose deaths. Combined state police efforts in 2013, one county, very small, about 30,000 people. We made over 400 arrests in one county. We seized over 8,000 grams of heroin in one county. We seized over $3 million in one county, small county in Cecil County. Statewide, as a part of a team, we seized over 80,000 grams of heroin. We seized over 18,000 OxyContin hydrocodone pills. But awareness, education is exactly what we're doing today. We have to educate our way out of this problem. I retired June 1st, 2015, after 26 years and 7 months. I continued to travel and speak on the heroin and opioid epidemic. I then partnered with Sinclair Broadcasting Group. We did 5 videos in the studio of ABC7. ABC7 did a 5-day series, The Heroin Highway. Day 1 of ABC7's TV show, my video, What is the Cost of Heroin, went on their website. And day 2, what can be done for someone who's addicted to heroin. Day 3, warning signs of heroin. The heroin epidemic has hit Maryland. How long does it take to become addicted to heroin? February 3rd, 2016, I joined the Maryland Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. The best feeling I can tell you being part of this team, because there's no job I can think of that would position me any better than my current position to talk about the heroin and opioid epidemic, is through the Maryland Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. The best feeling I get with this team is this. Not long after I retired, my wife and I walked into a restaurant. We were seated, and a lady walked over to us, and she held up her cell phone, and she said, when you walked into the building, I texted my daughter, and I said, our hero's in the building. I looked at her, I'm not getting it. She said, it's been 14 years ago since you called me. Ladies and gentlemen, 14 years ago, her 3-year-old daughter was abducted. I recovered her 3-year-old daughter in Tyler, Texas, and at 2 o'clock in the morning, I called this lady and said, someone needs to talk to you. So the feeling I feel being part of DHMH is the same feeling, proud feeling, of recovering her child. In this job, I have 3 hats. The governor, through an executive order, created Coordinating Council on Heroin. I'm part of that council. There's over 9,000 employees in our department. Anything safety and security I get. We have 11 hospitals statewide. I'm responsible for the safety and security of all 11. Each hospital has a police department and a security department. I'm their chief of police. But 80% of my time is battling the heroin and opioid epidemic. Individuals in our communities are dying because of a lack of knowledge. February 24th, 2015, I stood on the second floor of the State House in Annapolis with Governor, Lieutenant Governor, and many others. The governor signed 2 executive orders to deal with and tackle the heroin and opioid epidemic. Keeping in mind, the governor was only in office for 4 weeks. The governor said, you know, Lieutenant Governor and I were traveling the campaign trail. We would stop and talk to every community leader, every county, every community. What's your number one problem? Expecting to hear budgets and potholes. Every county, every community, the number one problem was heroin. I watched the governor get emotional talking about losing a loved one to an overdose death. The governor said from 2010 to 2013, we have a 95% increase in heroin overdose deaths. In 2014 in Maryland, we had a total of 1,041 total overdose deaths of all modalities. What I mean by that, that's heroin, that's crack, that's fentanyl, that's cocaine. Of the 1,041, 578 of those deaths are from heroin. To put that in perspective, in the same year, we had 363 homicides in Maryland. In the same year, 462 people died in car crashes. In 2015, we had a total of 1,259 total overdose deaths. Of the 1,259, 748 were from heroin. In 2015, 86% of our total overdose deaths in Maryland were from heroin, fentanyl, and opioids in 2015. In 2016, last year, the first 9 months, when I say the first 9 months, because the last quarter data isn't in yet. So the first 9 months of last year, we had 1,468 total overdose deaths. Of the 1,468 deaths, we had 910 were from heroin. Think about that. Are we deadlier in Chicago? Chicago had 762 murders in 2016. Crime epidemic, that's all you heard about. But in 9 months, we more than doubled the number of overdose deaths we've had in 9 months at 1,468. I would project when the total overdose death comes in, we're going to be far over 2,000 deaths in Maryland in 2016. What has forever changed the game? Why from 2010 to present, what has happened? Why are we seeing this every day? Why is it an epidemic? Why has the governor declared a state of emergency, $50 million being dispersed over the next 5 years, $10 million a year? 3 things. The opioid epidemic has created a heroin epidemic. The Center for Disease and Control says that 75% of today's addiction starts with an opioid, then it goes to heroin. Number 2, the heroin is coming from Mexico. It is more pure, it is more potent, and it's cheaper. Number 3 is fentanyl. Those are the 3 things that has forever changed the game on the heroin epidemic. I don't care if I'm in Frederick County today, or if I'll be in Cecil County tomorrow, or Baltimore City the next day. 90% of the crime occurring is drug-driven. They have a need, they have a habit. Frederick County is a very large county. But let's say you only have 200 people dope sick in Frederick County. Dope is heroin. Dope sick is generally how they talk about each other. So let's say you have 200 people dope sick. I would assume you probably have a couple thousand. But let's say you only have 200 people dope sick. Let's concede the average habit is a gram a day, $100 a day. Some more, some less. But if you only have 200 people sick, $100 a day, it's $20,000 a day in Frederick County. That's $600,000 a month in Frederick County. That's $7.2 million a year in Frederick County to feed one county's addiction, assuming you only have 200 people sick with heroin. When I worked in Baltimore City, out where the casino is in Rocky Gap in Western Maryland, Allegheny County, I lived near there. I would drive every single day from Rocky Gap to Baltimore City to get there at 5 o'clock in the morning. I would log about 5,000 miles driving it 5 days a week in 1 month's time frame. Through an investigation in Allegheny County, we learned that one female put 10,000 miles on a month on her car driving to Baltimore City. That's literally twice a day. She was a graduate of a local high school in Allegheny County, a beautiful girl. And if I could show her a picture then and now, we could go on to crystal meth. But she graduated, she had a child on the school bus, Baltimore City. Child off the school bus, Baltimore City. We locked her up. She was on home detention. And I get a call from the West Virginia State Police, and they said, Jimmy, can you come and assist us on a homicide? Our resources are a ways getting out. I roll up, and I'm standing over a body, lying in his pool of blood. The handgun's lying next to him. I can see the gunshot to the head. And I look back, and I see that little girl's car. She put 10,000 miles on that car. That was her boyfriend. He robbed the news convenience store in the heat of passion. He runs past his getaway car, and he inadvertently shoots himself in the head. As I continue to talk about someone addicted to heroin or someone addicted to cocaine or crack, not for 1 second are you talking about a bad person. You're talking about someone who's made a bad mistake. I don't know about you. I've made a ton of mistakes. But I've dusted myself off. I get up and I move on. With heroin, you cannot make that one mistake. I was in a Maryland high school, and I made that comment, and I connected with the little girl in the auditorium, thinking she's probably tried it 2, 3, 4 times, thinking she's not addicted. Wasn't the case. She come down to me and she says, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, as she's crying, for telling me that someone addicted to heroin is not a bad person. I said, may I ask why? She said, do you know so-and-so? I said, sweetie, I do. I said, she died Christmas Eve, a heroin overdose. The little girl started crying harder and said, that was my mom's best friend. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart telling me someone addicted to heroin is not a bad person. Let me walk you through what it's like being dope sick every single day. Dope is heroin, dope sick, I need it multiple times a day. So I'm going to wake up, I'm going to have an addiction so bad where I might have to sneak to a bathroom, or I might have to sneak to the basement, or I'm going to sneak somewhere because I've got to insert a needle into my arm. It's my belief, CDC says 75% of today's addiction starts with an opioid. So 75% of the people I'm going to talk about, their addiction starts with a prescription pill, then it goes to heroin. Why? 80 milligrams of OxyContin on the street goes for $80. 60 milligrams of OxyContin on the street goes for $60. 40 milligrams goes for $40. I can go to Baltimore City, get a $4 cap of heroin, and I can do the exact same thing. So I'm going to wake up, I'm going to get my needle out, I'm going to get my spoon out, and I'm going to heat it, I'm going to liquefy it. If someone's addicted to heroin, 2 things will trigger a heroin addiction faster than anything. Simply talk to them about a heroin addiction, or let them smell a lighter. About 5 years ago, I was in a Maryland high school, and I was talking about heroin. And I had an 11th grade student in the auditorium, a male student, couldn't even get up out of his seat. He's throwing up in his lap. He starts running out of the auditorium. He was addicted to heroin. Ever since then, when I'm in your schools, I have the health nurse with me. About a month ago, I was in a Maryland high school, and I did the 9th and 10th because the school was so big, we couldn't do it at one time, and I did the 11th and 12th. Little girl gets up. It's very disruptive. And I'm about halfway through my presentation. You're going to hear no pills, no pills, no pills. She gets up. She walks out. She goes into the bathroom. She snorts pills. She overdoses. One of 2 things. She's either that addicted or she's crying for help. So I'm going to wake up every single day. I'm going to get my spoon out. I'm going to heat it up. I put my powder in. 2 things will trigger the addiction. Talk to them about heroin or smell a lighter. Why? Every day, multiple times a day, I'm hitting that lighter. Someone, it might be 2 times a day. I'm going to eject my body. Someone might be 4 times a day, 5 times a day. It depends on the person's addiction. I'm going to heat it. I'm going to liquefy it. I'm going to tie off. I'm going to hit the pits. Anywhere there's a vein, they're going to inject heroin. Again, I'm hitting the pits. I'm releasing. I'm sneaking off to a bathroom. Just think about that. An addiction is so bad. I'm at Sheets's and I got to sneak into that bathroom to feed my addiction. But you know, not one person woke up and said, Jimmy Powell's, today's the day. Today's the day I'm going to decide to stick a needle in my arm because my addiction started with a prescription opioid. If you take nothing else from this, no opioids. If the doctor prescribes you OxyContin, doc, what's my alternative? If your son or daughter is prescribed Vicodin and a Percocet for the wisdom teeth pulled, doctor, what's the alternative? Because 75% of today's addiction, starting with an opioid. Scoring up, that's the leg, that's the legs, it's in the neck. Not one person woke up and said, today's the day. Today's the day that needle's going to go into my body because I'm so sick of my heroin addiction. The hands are generally the last place they will go to because it's so painful and it's so visible. The next slide you will see is very graphic. About a month ago, I walked into the Cumberland Barrack, the state police barrack in Allegheny County. And it was on a Monday, and that Tuesday, the Governor Hogan put in a bill in support of limiting opioids being prescribed for 7 days. So the next day, I'm testifying in support of Governor Hogan's bill to only prescribe opioids for 7 days. I walk into the back door of the barrack. They said, "Hey, Major, you need to go downstairs and talk to this young man. He's got an incredible story." So I'm walking down the steps to where it's being processed, and I'm smelling this horrible smell. And I walk around, here sits a young man shackled to the wall, and he's a shell. He has no teeth, and I said, "Sir, he said, "I know who you are. This young man's from Kaiser, West Virginia, my hometown where I grew up." And I talked to him about his addiction and what's occurring, and he explained everything away, and he showed me his one arm where it was skin was eaten away and it was healing up. And I said, "When does your skin start eating?" He said, "When I purchase heroin and it's pink, I inject it, it burns real bad, and I know it's going to start eating my skin." The last question I asked him, I said, "How did your addiction start?" He said, "Prescription opioids." Knowing the next day I'm in the House testifying support of a bill to limit opioids being prescribed for 7 days. You will see the cell bars behind him. The picture you will see is a forearm, and this individual resides in Kaiser, West Virginia. The last thing I said to him, I said, "Buddy, you're going to die." He said, "I know." Again, I can't say it enough. When we talk about someone addicted to heroin, we're not talking about a bad person. In Allegheny County, we identified what we call a DTO, a drug trafficking operation. In that county, these individuals were responsible for 70% of the heroin being distributed in Allegheny County. It was on a Wednesday we launched an initiative, and we're locking these individuals up. And Luke's being locked up. Luke, how long before you get sick? I got about 20 minutes. Sarah, how long before you got sick? I got about 30 minutes. When someone's addicted to heroin, they can give you an approximate time frame when they're going to get sick. When I say get sick, take the worst case of the flu you ever had, times it times 100, and that's what they go through withdrawing from heroin. So we launched this initiative on a Wednesday. On a Friday, 2 semi-success stories. A mother called in crying and said, "I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. You saved my daughter's life." Our secretary asked, "What do you mean?" "You locked up her supplier. She admitted herself to treatment." That same day, a little girl that lives in the southern end of Allegheny County, Maryland, 19 years of age, gets in her car to drive to Baltimore City to get her heroin because she can't get it locally because for a period of time, we shut it down. Think about that. She's 19 years of age. She's going to drive 3 hours to Baltimore City. She's going to buy heroin off someone she don't know. She's going to drive 3 hours back, spend the next 18 hours. She'll an overdose or die. She doesn't make it. She pulls to the side of the road in Flintstone, Maryland. She calls 911 because she's withdrawing so bad. She's taken to the hospital, and I received a phone call. I walk into the emergency room. Here lays a little girl with the deepest, darkest brown eyes I've ever seen. Her hands are clenched so tight to the sheet, they're shaking. Her little socks are sticking out the end of the bed, and they're brown as brown could be. Where are you at in your addiction? I'm about 6 to 8 times a day. 6 to 8 caps a day, that's 6 to 8 times she's injecting her body. How are you feeding that addiction? I have about 80 to 90 bad checks from Baltimore City to Allegheny County. Sharing needles? Just with my boyfriend. About that time, Mom comes walking in. They spend some time together, and I said, "Can I talk to you?" We step out in the hallway, and I said, "Mom, a heroin addiction is a chronic disease. It's my belief there's no difference than having cancer than having a heroin addiction. It's a chronic disease." And I explained the addiction to her. 3 things come into play that day. You had someone who needed help. You had someone from law enforcement, someone from treatment. That little 19-year-old girl, every single day, is making a difference in Marylanders' lives talking about her heroin addiction. I was in Queen Anne's County on your journey to Ocean City. As soon as you cross the Bay Bridge, that is Queen Anne's County. And I spoke at the Chamber of Commerce breakfast meeting. And I got done, and a beautiful young lady, 45 years of age, comes up to me. And she said, "You talked about normally someone will snort for 2 years before they go into injecting." She said, "I snorted for 4 years." She said, "I resided in Cecil County, Maryland, as far north as you can go." She said, "Every single day through my theft scheme, I would leave Cecil County, Baltimore City, every day. By the time I got to Baltimore City, I'd have $100 to $150 a day. Going in Walmart, stealing, returning the items. Going in Lowe's, stealing, returning the items. She says I was never arrested. She said my addiction got worse and worse and worse, and I started running with two individuals who were very violent and selling a large amount of heroin. She said I was the driver. This is now a girl, 13 years in recovery. She's married, lives on the water, and extremely successful. She said it was a Friday, a large amount of heroin was ordered up. Unbeknownst to us, it was the Maryland State Police. The two went to the door, knocked on the door. They were drugged into the door by the Maryland State Police. She said a trooper got in front of me and said, "Shut your car off, shut your car off." She said, "I gunned it." A beautiful girl, 45, 13 years in recovery, residing on the water, very successful. She said, "I ran over the trooper. As I was running over, the trooper discharged his gun, and the round lodged in my ear." She said, "I've got this. I've done this all my whole life." She said, "I pulled into a 7-Eleven, and I went running in and said, 'I've been robbed, I've been robbed.'" She said, "I would have never touched myself because I was so obsessed." She said, "A nurse grabbed me, and the last thing I remember is being held in the fetal position. I woke up, and I was in jail. I'm like, where's my mother? I called Mom, and I said, 'Mom, where you at?' 'The ball's been in your court. The ball's been in my court.'" 13 years in recovery, very successful. She gets done her story, and she goes like this. I said, "What are you doing?" She said, "I could snort heroin right now. I can inject heroin right now because I have to be somewhere every single day talking about my addiction, making a difference to someone else." Let's talk about 3 tools in a toolbox. If you have a loved one sick with heroin, methadone might not be the answer. Buprenorphine or Suboxone might not be the answer. Vivitrol might not be the answer. But these are tools in a toolbox to treat a heroin or an opioid addiction. Methadone is the most studied drug out there to treat an opioid addiction. Been around since the 1960s. Let's say I'm sick with heroin, I go to a clinic, and I'm going to pay approximately $11 a day to get my meds, to have a sense of normalcy, to not get sick. That's $333 a month to have a sense of normalcy, compared to, on average, sometimes a gram a day, $100 a day. I crossed paths with a 22-year-old male working with the state police in Allegheny County, and he had a self-admitted $200 a day habit. As I stand here before you today, his mom and dad have no idea he was ever addicted to heroin, none. He had a pre-existing medical condition. We withdraw from heroin. "Mom, Dad, it's this." "Yes, son, we got that." To this day, I have no idea. He resided in Allegheny County. His closest clinic was in Hagerstown. So think about this. I'm going to get up at 5 o'clock every day. I'm going to drive an hour to Hagerstown. I'm going to get my meds. I'm going to drive an hour back, and I'm going to go to work. He has since got married, bought a house, and had a child. Is methadone for everybody? No. Is buprenorphine or Suboxone for everybody? It could be. But these are tools in a toolbox. My wife owns a small business in Allegheny County. And one of her clients, we arrested her son. He was distributing heroin. He does his time in jail. He gets out of jail, and we get him on a very intensive buprenorphine program. About 6 months passed. My wife never said a word about her client or her client's son. And I ran into her client in Walmart. I said, "Can I ask how your son's doing?" She said, "Jimmy Paz, when he was born, I celebrate every pound he gained. He's gained 30 pounds on buprenorphine. I've celebrated every pound of those 30 pounds. It's physician-based. I'm sick. I go in, introduced in 2001. I get my meds. If you don't have insurance, it's about $600 a month for the buprenorphine or the Suboxone." Vivitrol. Vivitrol is relatively new. It's an injection. It's non-narcotic. It's non-addictive. The window is I have to be clean for approximate 2-week period before I'm given a Vivitrol shot. It's good for 1 month, so I get an injection. I have to go back in the next month, get an injection. The next month to get an injection. The first person I helped on Vivitrol, I went to school with. I grew up with in West Virginia. His father called my dad and said, "Hey, you got to have your boy call me." Typical story. My friend was a construction worker, got hurt on the job, addicted to opioids, and going to heroin, motel to motel to motel, 2 kids, homeless, and we get him on Vivitrol. 3 injections, he's clean. He's back home, and he's back to work. He's with his children. The second person I work with resided on the Eastern Shore, a friend of mine's daughter. She was addicted to heroin. We got her on the Vivitrol, and now she's addicted to crack cocaine. You can't just receive the injection and everything's going to be okay. It's going to take full wraparound services with the Vivitrol. About 3 months ago, on a Wednesday, my wife received a call from a gentleman at her business and said, "Could you do me a favor? Could you have your husband call me?" That evening, I called this individual. He says, "Jimmy," he said, "my son-in-law is addicted to heroin. I have 2 wonderful granddaughters, and I don't know what to do." So I start asking the methadone, he said, "I don't know what you're talking about." I said, "Call your son-in-law and see if he's open for an intervention." He says, "Yeah, but Jimmy, he lives in Morgantown. You're driving an hour away. You don't even know us." I said, "Call him." He calls me right back and he says, "Yep, he's open." I meet this family on Pierpont Road exit in Morgantown, and we drive to the house. I'm walking in, and the wife and the 2 children are leaving. The wife looks at her husband and says, "You haven't hit rock bottom, but I have. You better get it together." We sit down at the table, and I start talking to him about his addiction. I ask him to take off his shirt. He's very, very bruised. When I first met him, I shook his hand and I touched him on purpose, and he was sweating, which told me he's withdrawing, he probably hasn't used. He was the most functional heroin addict I've ever talked to in 28 years in the business. And we sat down, we started talking. "Have you tried methadone?" I self-medicated, but it really didn't work. "Have you tried buprenorphine or Suboxone?" I'm currently on that. "I drive an hour to Oakland and I get my meds for 30 days and I'm good." "Have you tried Vivitrol?" "What's Vivitrol?" "I don't know what Vivitrol is." And I'm explaining to him what Vivitrol is. In our conversation, I was talking about, right now, that heroin's more important to your wife. He's sobbing, yes. "Right now, that heroin's more important to your 2 children. He's sobbing harder, yes. So I'm walking through the Vivitrol. He had 2 things in his favor. Number 1, he's never been arrested. Number 2, he has insurance, because Vivitrol is $1,000 per injection. And I'm about halfway through, and he says, excuse me, sir." He said, "What's the side effects of Vivitrol?" I said, "Excuse me?" "You're injecting heroin every single day. You're buying it off the street." I said, "Are you hearing about fentanyl?" "I'm reading about fentanyl every single day." "So you're going to ask me about the side effects?" That's how the heroin changes the brain. We stood up from his table. He hugged me so hard he knocked the wind out of me. I get in the car and I'm on cloud 9. My saying is, one life, one day, we're going to change Maryland. This day, it was one life, one day, we're going to change West Virginia. We drive the hour home. My wife and I are talking, and I'm like, "You know what? This is a great feeling." And about 2 weeks would pass. "Well, did you reach out to them?" "Nope," because if it was bad, then they would have reached out to me. About 2 weeks ago, this gentleman calls. He says, "Jimmy, I want to thank you for everything you did." He said he just couldn't get clean. He couldn't stop using heroin for those 2 weeks. He was supposed to pick up my grandchild. She never shows up. My grandchild comes home, finding her dad, and she's 13 years of age, finding her dad dead of a heroin overdose. What does heroin look like? Everybody's visual. Baltimore City is one of your last major metropolitan areas to sell it in a capsule. Philly, different places, it's going to come in a glassine pack. It seems like the whiter nowadays it gets, the more it's cut with fentanyl, and I'll talk to you about what fentanyl is. That is a hit kit. That is a fix kit. If your loved one starts carrying around a Crown Rule bag that he or she shouldn't carry, pick it up, look through it. If your loved one's carrying a backpack you'd haven't normally see him with, pick it up, look through it. Because that's a fix kit, that's a hit kit. Generally, they're going to carry these type of things to feed their addiction. Let's talk about naloxone or Narcan. Naloxone is a generic name, Narcan is the name. It's the medication that easily reverses the effects of any heroin or opioid overdose. Through the Governor's Overdose Response Program, we have over 39,000 people trained to administer Narcan in Maryland. If you're over 18, you reside in Maryland, call the Frederick County Health Department. They'll schedule the training, 1-hour block of training, get your meds. So we have over 39,000 people trained to administer Narcan. We have 55 organizations in Maryland doing the training. This past summer, I was speaking at an event, and Darryl Strawberry was the keynote speaker, and I was going right before him. And I was getting my headset on. I'm standing next to a paramedic, and this lady walks by that I know very well. And obviously she's there because she wants help. And he nudges me on the shoulder, and he says, "Jimmy," he says, "we brought her back to life 9 times. What do you think about that?" I said, you bring her back 10 times. You bring her back 11 times. You bring her back 12 times. That's someone's daughter. That's someone's mother. That's someone's aunt. That's someone's loved one. Trooper Mark Licklider is a trooper in Allegheny County. He's an EMT. He said, Jimmy, I got a call for an unresponsive male outside the theaters at the mall. He said, I roll up, and he said, this male's blue. He said, I assess him, he's dead. He said, I hit him with the Narcan. Fire and rescue come. They give him some oxygen, and he goes to the hospital. He said about 5 hours later, we're doing paperwork at the barrack, and his car comes screeching in the gas station across from the Cumberland barrack. A male comes running in, and he starts beating on the duty officer's desk. I need my cell phone. I need my cell phone. That was that individual that lied dead 5 hours ago. That individual needed his cell phone to call his drug dealer because the heroin forever changes the brain. It's a chronic disease. Fentanyl. This has changed the game. There was a time you would talk to someone, I've been addicted to heroin for 20 years. That time is no more. With fentanyl, carfentanil, you might have a 1 in 100 chance of injecting heroin and not overdosing and not dying. China has over 150,000 clandestine labs making the fentanyl. It goes from China to Mexico, Mexico to the United States. On the street, a kilogram of fentanyl is $2,500. On the street, a kilogram of heroin is approximately $65,000. So they're mixing the fentanyl with the heroin to increase their profits. But oftentimes the seller doesn't know it's fentanyl, and the end user has no idea it's fentanyl. But you've often heard, we've brought him back 2 times in 3 hours, or we brought this individual back 3 times in 3 days. Why? All likelihood, there was some amount of fentanyl in that drug that they snorted or injected. In Maryland, from 2007 to 2013, we averaged a low of 17 fentanyl deaths and a high of 31 fentanyl deaths. In 2014, we had 186 fentanyl overdose deaths in Maryland. In 2015, we had 340. When the total overdose data comes in for 2016, I'm going to guess we're probably going to be pushing 1,000. I don't know, but I'm probably going to guess we're pushing 1,000 because the carfentanil has forever changed the game on the overdoses. Carfentanil, as it was alluded to earlier, 3 deaths recently, 2 in Anne Arundel County, 1 here in Frederick County. What is carfentanil? It's a synthetic opioid, and it's used to tranquilize large animals, such as elephants. And they're mixing this because they're increasing their profit margin because it's much cheaper to make. And again, it's 100 times more deadly than fentanyl. Prescription meds, I can't say it enough. The opioid epidemic has created the heroin epidemic. If you take nothing from today, just remember no opioids. Your son, your daughter has their wisdom teeth pulled. There's no reason for them to have 30 Vicodin. There's no reason for them to have 30 OxyContin. There's no reason for your son to hurt his knee playing baseball or basketball or football and get 90 OxyContin. The opioid epidemic has created the heroin epidemic. This is where it's starting. Narcotic investigations, as well as intelligence gathering, uncovered highly educated, well-motivated group of individuals to obtain prescription meds. The only real problem is coming up with new and inventive ways. I want you to take a second and I want you to read this next slide. This next slide was written by a third party to an individual on how to get his OxyContin. The individual that received the note had a job making over $150 an hour. He sustained a knee injury, got addicted to OxyContin, lost everything, residing in a basement. On the weekends, his son would live with him. His son woke up to find his dad deceased with this note above the headboard. Cash only. Tell him he really hurt for the first time. He's a regular doctor. When you call for an appointment, tell him it's for pain management. Good luck. I'm going to shift gears a little bit, and I'm going to talk about crystal meth. Crystal meth is not an individual problem. Crystal meth is a community problem. If you see something, say something. There's a lot of people saying, hey, you think the opioid epidemic's bad? Wait till crystal meth comes along, and it's going to be bad. I do agree with that, but I don't agree with the opioid epidemic is going anywhere anytime soon because we have way too many people sick with heroin. but I was putting this presentation together this morning. I thought I'm going to spend a little bit of time and talk to you about crystal meth. She is 19 years of age. That is skin graft after skin graft after skin graft with making crystal meth, and the meth lab blew up. The next couple slides you see are very graphic. If you have a weak stomach, turn your head or close your eyes. She's a beautiful young girl. She is not addicted to crystal meth. She's living in a household and she's a meth orphan. Mom and dad are manufacturing crystal meth. Mom and dad are not feeding her, and she's a meth orphan suffering. The next two slides you'll see of infants residing in a household, and they're overcome by the gases with mom and dad is making crystal meth. Crystal meth is not an individual problem. Crystal meth is a community problem. You don't see a lot of old users with crystal meth because they're either dead or in jail with crystal meth. All ages associated. It's a very highly addictive stimulant, and it's very toxic to the central nervous system. Sold in a powder or rock form, generally crystal meth is smoked. Some of your signs and indicators of a loved one, watch their teeth. The first thing to go on crystal meth is your teeth. Why? I'm going to have a glass pipe. I'm going to put that glass pipe in my mouth. The pipe has an opening on the top. I'm going to put my crystal meth in the pipe. I'm going to heat it so that pipe's getting real hot on my teeth. And then what's in crystal meth causes deterioration to the body, and I have some pictures of that. Snort it. I'm high at 60 to 120 seconds. I parachute it. What's that mean? If you're in fire and rescue, you respond to an unresponsive male that's in and out of it. Hey, I just parachuted. In their world, that means that I took crystal meth in the powdered form, I wrapped it up, and I swallowed it. You're going to see a lot of white residue to the tongue, and the first thing to go on crystal meth generally is their peripheral vision, then their vision. I inject it. I'm high in 4 to 5 seconds. I smoke it. It's the very intense high. It can be in various forms. Don't get locked in. Yep, that's what crystal meth looks like. It depends on what internet recipe or what friend or associate instructed them on how to make crystal meth. Very similar to cocaine, effects last from 6 to 8 hours, or the user can stay awake for a few days up to several weeks at a time, high on crystal meth. Some terms that you'll hear. If you watch CSI or Criminal Minds, you'll hear he's a tweaker, he's a geeker. That's words in the meth culture. I talked to an individual that walked around Walmart for 9 hours, high on crystal meth. I talked to a lady, as soon as she'd hit the meth pipe, she would duct tape her fingers together. Why? She had a tendency to pull her hair out. Sketched out, you hear someone say, I'm sketched out. That's in the meth world. The best odor I can describe to you what someone smells like on crystal meth, up on days at a time. If you have a cat, don't clean your cat litter box for about 5 days, and that's what he or she will smell like when they're high on crystal meth up for several days at a time. Over-the-counter cold and allergy tablets is your number one ingredient. In 2005, I traveled to the White House, and I sat in then Senator Frist's office with a number of law enforcement officials, discussed how you attach ephedrine pseudoephedrine to the Patriot Act. What did that result in? You can only get so much ephedrine pseudoephedrine at one time because that is the main ingredient for making crystal meth. Certain brands of drain cleaners in crystal meth, the gases, that's what it looks like when we suit up to go in and identify and dismantle a meth lab. For every pound of meth made, there's 5 to 7 pounds of waste with crystal meth. This is dated, but the numbers you see before you are meth labs and dump sites identified and dismantled. What do I mean by dump site? I make a large amount of meth, I'm going to take it to a field, and I'm going to dump it. That's a dump site. So that would account for one of the numbers on the map you'll see. This is meth labs identified, dismantled in the United States in 1996. According to the National Clandestine Laboratory Database. I want you to keep an eye on 1 and 131. 1996, meth labs identified, dismantled, and seized. If you see something, say something. One person comes into your neighborhood, they're going to show 10 people how to make crystal meth. 1997, not bad. Still not bad, 174. 2 years into it, boom. 1 year later, 2,585 labs identified, dismantled, and seized. Look at the numbers popping. One person comes in, they're going to show 10 people how to make crystal meth. 2000, 14, 19, 2001, 2, you can see the numbers popping, 3, and 4. Sit back and relax. I'm visual. If I see it, I never forget it. The pictures you're going to see are pictures taken from meth labs. When it gets graphic, I will tell you because there's some very graphic pictures in this. That's a shake and bake meth lab. In the latter part of 2013 in Garrett County, Maryland, we identified and dismantled 7 meth labs. They were all the shake and bake method where they simply shake and they bake till they get their end product. Who needs that much red devil lye? Nobody, unless you're making or manufacturing crystal meth. A very large meth lab. You see something, say something. We've done our best to educate our retailers that cylinder head's blue. Part of the oxidation process of making crystal meth will turn that cylinder head blue. You're camping, you're in your RV, you're somewhere, and you happen to glance down, that cylinder head's blue. See something, say something. Very large meth lab. That's in a motel, that's a couple gram meth lab. But where's those gases going? You saw what the gases does, and where's those gases going in that hotel, that motel? It's going into the carpet, it's going into the curtains. Very messy meth lab. Number 1 ingredient, red phosphorus. The next slide is not blood. The next slide, he was making crystal meth. Red phosphorus was part of his product. You can see the funnels, you can see the tubing where the lab blew up. Next couple slides are graphic. See something, say something. See something, say something. That cylinder head's blue. He's in his house, overcome by the gases. He's in a hotel, motel, trunk of a car. Individual on the right side is doing all the right things for the right reasons. Individual on the left side was manufacturing crystal meth. Thank goodness the individual on the right side was not home. First thing to go is your teeth. That is not where he's injecting crystal meth. That is his crank bugs. He's up for several days at a time. He's hallucinating, so he starts pulling at his skin. He's seeing crank bugs. That is 3 months on crystal meth. That I don't know, but that is 3 months on crystal meth. The next slide you will see is about a 3-month time frame on crystal meth, his first arrest, his next arrest. The next slide you will see is 3 years and 6 months from her first arrest, multiple arrests in between, to arrest where she's aged 90 years. There's quotes from a family I met from Pennsylvania. When he tried it for the first time, that was that. He disappeared. When he finally called for a week, his voice trembled. It nonetheless brought a wave of relief. He was alive. He slept for 20 more hours a day for a week, withdrawing from meth. There are voluntary and court-ordered rehabs, car crashes, the house went up in flames, emergency rides to the emergency room, overdoses. He then died on his 40th birthday. You have about a 20% chance to recover from heroin or methadone. You have less than a 10% chance to recover from crystal meth. There's no methadone, there's no buprenorphine, no Vivitrol on crystal meth. It's total abstinence. Some people will file bankruptcy. They're going to lose their home. When I was a detective sergeant, I was contacted by a husband and wife. They said, "We need to talk to you." They came into my office and they sat down. They said, "We're about ready to lose our home." They both had great jobs. "Our son's addicted, our daughter-in-law is addicted, and we don't know what to do." I put them on the right path and said, "Here's what you need to do. You can't rationalize this behavior. You have to hit it head on. We're going to do ABC 1, 2, 3. About 2 years passed, and I was promoted to rank of lieutenant, and I was just getting ready to assume command of the Cumberland Barrack, and I haven't talked to this husband and wife. I didn't see where we arrested their son or their daughter-in-law on any documents or any arrest reports, and I see them in a restaurant we're seated at. I'm with 5 of my colleagues, and the mother comes walking over to me, and I see the tears rolling down her cheek. She puts her hand on my shoulder, and she says, "I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. You saved my son's life, and you saved my daughter-in-law's life." Crack cocaine, compulsive cocaine-seeking behavior. It's coming back around. It hit us in the early 90s, it went, but it's starting to come back around. There's nothing your body needs every 20 minutes, every 30 minutes, every 40 minutes. If you have the money, you have the crack cocaine, you're going to seek that out. It's compulsive cocaine-seeking behavior. When I was working undercover in Baltimore City, I watched a young man smoke about $1,000 of crack cocaine in a 24-period time frame. I was presenting at a school in Morgan County, West Virginia, and I got done, and this little girl comes up to me and she says, "Look, I need to talk to you." She said, "But I'm going to start crying. You're going to have to bear with me." We step inside the gymnasium. This little girl says, "You know, you talked about crack cocaine. They hit rock bottom. They fiend it. My best friend's addicted to crack cocaine." I watch my best friend smoke in front of me because she does such horrible things. My best friend takes $200 a pay and it goes to crack cocaine. In her conversation, she's talking about her 7-year-old sister. And I said, sweetie, and this girl's in the 9th grade. I said, how old's your best friend? She pauses. That best friend's my mother. I wanted to pick that little girl up and run out of that church as fast as I could. But how can I tell that little girl it's going to be okay today? It's going to be okay tomorrow. Because in the 9th grade, she's a provider, she's a caregiver for her 7-year-old sister because of compulsive cocaine-seeking behavior. When I was working undercover in Baltimore City, we were buying crack out of a row house. And it might be a $20 piece, that means $20. Might be a $50 piece, that means $50. And you walk into the row house and the drug dealer's standing in the back. You think for 1 second I could walk in and I could buy the crack cocaine working undercover and I could walk back out? Absolutely not. When I walked in, I would have to walk around people that were on their hands and knees. Why? Because crack cocaine or paint's dropping from the ceiling and hitting the floor, and there's so much crack being sold out of that house that they were hoping for 1 second that was crack cocaine that was dropping on the floor, and they're putting in their pipe and they're smoking the paint. It's compulsive cocaine-seeking behavior. We're wrapping up. We talk about addiction. 3 things. You have dependence, you have physical addiction, you have psychological addiction. Then you have addiction. Your physical addiction. If I could have a dime for every time I talk to someone addicted to heroin, how long's your high? I don't get high, Jimmy. I have to keep using to have a sense of normacy. It's changing the brain. The more I use, the more I need for a sense of normacy. The psychological addiction, that's your crack cocaine. There's nothing your body needs every 20 minutes, every 30 minutes, or every hour because of the psychological addiction. When I go into your schools, I talk to your kids and I say, you know what? In my world, the highest court for me at one time was the United States Supreme Court. In our children's world, the highest court for them is the court of our peers. And you're probably thinking, how in the world, what are we going to do to get out of this epidemic? I can tell you what Jimmy Piles is going to do, and I can tell you what the Maryland Department of Health and Mental Hygiene is going to do. We're going to be in every single school in Maryland educating our children. We're going to send a strong message. At the end of school year last year in Pennsylvania, I was at a school and I got done. And when I get done, children often tell me their stories of death and destruction. And I'm about halfway through, and this young man sticks his hand out and he says, on behalf of the graduating class, I want you to be our commencement speaker. That's the message we're going to get in every single school in Maryland. A couple weeks ago, I spoke at Gerstel Academy in Carroll County. I got done, it's a high school, I got done, every single student lined up to shake my hand. That's the message we're getting in every single school. Number 2, we're going to work with our prescribers to stop prescribing opioids. That has got to stop. I'm sure on November 8th, some of you peeked at the TV, or you were glued to the TV watching the presidential election. In Maryland, there's nearly 3.9 million people registered to vote. In 2015 in Maryland, there was over 4.2 million opioids prescribed. That is absolutely unacceptable. Number 3, we have to send the message that there's no stigma with the heroin addiction that's a chronic disease. I was talking to members of the faith community, and I got done, and a lady stood up in her pew. Not one person at church knew their son was addicted. She said, I've never understood it. I thought it's something I did wrong because it crosses every race, every gender, every economic status. She said, it's not. It's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with my son's moral compass, but he's addicted to heroin. She said, I'm walking from behind this pew. I'm walking out the doors of this church. I'm going to the highest building, and I'm going to start talking about heroin addiction that it's not a chronic disease. We have to increase our access and awareness to methadone, buprenorphine, Vivitrol. We have to increase our access and awareness to Narcan. Lastly, there's 47 hospitals in Maryland with emergency rooms. Gosh forbid, if I had a heart attack, most of our emergency rooms, or all of our emergency rooms, I'm going to be seen. If I have a non-fatal overdose, I'm going to be handed a website and a phone number, and I'm going to walk out of that hospital. That is unacceptable. We have to have peer support face-to-face whenever they're waking up and withdrawing from a heroin overdose. I'll share a story with you and we'll open up to questions. Right after I got this new job, I'm trying to figure out the insurance piece when someone comes to me to get them help and try to get them on Medicaid. So I had a meeting, it was that day, with several individuals explaining to me, they're like, Jimmy, it's easy to remember when it comes to the drug world. Medicare don't care, get them on Medicaid. It's like, that's easy enough for even Jimmy Powell to remember. That evening about 5:30, my wife's hearing half the conversation. A very good friend of mine calls me. I've never heard his voice waver, crackle, nothing. He built a business from the ground to a multi-million-dollar business. He couldn't even talk. He said, I'm going to put my wife on the phone. The wife gets on the phone and says, Jimmy, our 24-year-old son's addicted to heroin. He's involved in a moped accident. He got put on opioids, and now he's addicted to heroin. He's stolen from us, and we've recovered the items, and I want him in the mass unit. The mass unit is a 30-day inpatient unit, and she said, I want him in the mass unit. This was a Friday, and I said, does he have Medicaid? No. Where does he reside? PA. Is he Medicaid eligible? Yes. I said, I can't get him in there until Monday, and it's going to cost you $370 a day. She says, Jimmy, he isn't going to make it. When a mother tells you that he isn't going to make it, she means one of two things. He's going to overdose, or he's going to overdose and die. Now think about this. If you had a child. I said, where is he? I said, you have him? She said, Jimmy, we have him locked in the shed. That time is no more. Today, I've given you a tool in a toolbox. I've given you a book to put in your book pack. As I said, one life, one day, we are going to change Maryland. With your knowledge, one life, one day, you are going to change Maryland. Questions? Ma'am.